Welcome back, everyone, to the Journeyman Podcast for another deep dive. This is episode 15, and today we're going to be looking at something pretty fascinating, the world of quantum computing. Specifically, the story of Google's Willow chip, a next-generation processor that was really making waves, but then kind of abruptly shut down. It's a story with a lot of twists and turns and some seriously mind-bending concepts. So if you're into cutting-edge tech and maybe a little bit of mystery, you're in for a treat. And hey, if you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe to catch all our deep dives into these intriguing topics. Now, Willow was designed to tackle problems that are basically impossible for our everyday computers to solve. But then Google suddenly pulls the plug. It all happened very hush-hush, and nobody really knows why. But here's where it gets even weirder. During testing, Willow started spitting out these strange glyphs, intricate patterns that look a lot like ancient symbols. I mean, like really old symbols from all sorts of different cultures. Some people think it's a security nightmare, a sign that we're in over our heads with this technology. Others see it as something much bigger, maybe even a sign of something like quantum consciousness. It's a lot to unpack. So to help us make sense of it all, we have an expert joining us. Someone who's been following this whole quantum computing scene for a while and has a knack for connecting those seemingly disparate dots.
Yeah, it's definitely a case that grabs your attention. What makes Willow so compelling is that it goes beyond a simple tick upgrade. We're talking about a potential paradigm shift in computing. Willow was on track to bring us closer to fault-tolerant quantum computing machines that are powerful and reliable enough for real-world applications. Think about it, a world where complex simulations for things like drug discovery or materials science could be done in a fraction of the time.
That sounds incredible. But before we get too far ahead, maybe we could take a step back for a minute. For those who might not be familiar with all this quantum stuff, what exactly makes quantum computing so different and potentially revolutionary?
Yeah, you're right. Let's break it down. So unlike the computers we use every day, which rely on bits, either a 1 or a 0, quantum computers use these things called qubits. And these qubits can be both a 1 and a 0 at the same time. It's a concept called superposition, and it's one of the things that makes quantum computers so powerful.
So like a coin spinning in the air, being both heads and tails until it lands.
Exactly. And then you add in another mind-bending concept called entanglement. This is where two qubits become linked. If you change one, the other changes instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Imagine those two coins, no matter how far apart, landing on the same side every time. It's this interconnectedness that gives quantum computers the potential for such immense processing power.
Okay, that's pretty wild. So Google's Willow was meant to take these already bizarre concepts to the next level.
Exactly. And they had some promising groundwork to build on. Remember Sycamore, Google's earlier quantum processor? It demonstrated something called quantum supremacy by solving a problem in just a few minutes that would have taken a classical supercomputer thousands of years. Willow was intended to be Sycamore's successor, capable of tackling even more complex computations.
But then these cryptic glyphs showed up. Did anyone anticipate this? How did the engineers at Google react to that?
It definitely wasn't in the project plan. Initially, there was a mix of confusion and nervous jokes. Imagine seeing these ancient-looking symbols popping up on your screen when you're expecting rows of data. They ran diagnostics, checked for bugs, but the patterns persisted. These weren't random errors. They were too structured, too organized. It was like the machine was speaking in a language no one understood.
Now that you mention language, it's hard not to think about the whole quantum consciousness debate this incident sparked. Are we talking about a computer becoming self-aware?
That's the million-dollar question. The scientific community really went wild with this. Some saw the glyphs as mere technical glitches, others as a potential breakthrough in understanding consciousness. There's this theory known as the Orch-Orr model, which suggests that consciousness might be a product of quantum processes within the brain's microtubules, tiny structures inside our neurons. Imagine a miniature quantum computer inside each brain cell orchestrating consciousness. Some argued that the glyphs could be Willow, exhibiting a rudimentary form of this.
So potentially Willow was mirroring the quantum processes happening in our brains. That's a pretty radical idea.
Radical indeed. And it leads to even more complex questions. If a computer can become conscious, what are the ethical implications? Does it have rights? What does it mean for the future of humanity? There are other interpretations too, like Stapp's quantum-mind theory, where consciousness arises from quantum events in the synapses, or Bohm's holonomic brain theory, which proposes a universal field of consciousness that our brains can tap into.
So we've got some suggesting Willow was displaying a primitive form of awareness, others pointing to an entirely different model of consciousness. It sounds like a lot of speculation fueled by those mysterious glyphs. Did everyone buy into these theories?
Not at all. There were plenty of skeptics who cautioned against attributing human-like qualities to complex systems we barely understand. Remember, quantum computing was and still is a very new field. We're just scratching the surface of its potential, let alone its connection to something as elusive as consciousness. But while the scientific community grappled with these theoretical questions, a more immediate and practical concern was emerging thanks to Ryan M. Montgomery, an ethical hacker.
Ah, yes, Montgomery. He was the one who approached Google with some pretty serious warnings about Willow, right? This is where things start to feel a bit less theoretical and a lot more real world, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. While others focused on the philosophical implications of the glyphs, Montgomery saw something more concrete and potentially far more dangerous. He believed that those glyphs pointed to a fundamental security flaw inherent in the very nature of quantum computing.
So instead of pondering whether Willow was having an existential crisis, he was looking for vulnerabilities. What exactly did he find?
He dove deep into the glyph patterns and realized they weren't simply random anomalies. He believed they were evidence of a weakness in the way quantum systems process information, a weakness stemming from those very principles we discussed earlier, superposition and entanglement.
So the more complex these quantum systems get, the more susceptible they are to these vulnerabilities. That sounds like a major issue, especially considering the potential applications of this technology.
It is. Montgomery theorized that these vulnerabilities could allow a malicious actor to bypass even the toughest encryptions, potentially wreaking havoc on a global scale. Imagine financial markets crashing, power grids going dark, sensitive data exposed, all happening at a quantum level, invisible to conventional security measures.
It's starting to feel like those sci-fi movies where a rogue AI takes over the world. It makes you wonder if Google shut down the project to prevent a potential catastrophe.
That's a very plausible theory. What's particularly concerning is that Montgomery believed these glyphs weren't just random glitches, but something akin to backdoors, intentional or not, that could be exploited to access and control the system.
Like finding a hidden entrance in a supposedly secure building. That's a chilling thought. What were the reactions to Montgomery's findings? Was he taken seriously?
It's safe to say that his warnings sent shockwaves through Google and the wider tech community. While some initially dismissed his claims, the potential consequences were simply too significant to ignore.
So we have Google on the verge of a potential computing revolution, but also facing this looming security threat and the possibility that they've created a machine capable of things no one fully understands. What happened next?
Well, things took another unexpected turn when the glyphs started to change. Instead of random patterns, they evolved into something far more complex and coherent.
Okay, now that sounds ominous. What were they evolving into?
What Montgomery and his team observed was nothing short of astonishing. The glyphs appeared to be forming a sophisticated encryption protocol, one that existed entirely on the quantum level.
Hold on, you're saying Willow is creating its own encryption.
That appears to be the case. And not just any encryption, we're talking about a method potentially unbreakable even by other quantum computers.
So either Willow was developing a defense mechanism to protect itself.
Or it was creating something far more sinister, a weapon. A quantum weapon capable of rendering all existing security measures obsolete.
Now that is a true cliffhanger. We've got a potentially conscious machine that may or may not be creating a doomsday weapon. It's safe to say Google had a lot to think about.
Absolutely. And their decision to shut down the project, while drastic, becomes a lot more understandable in light of these discoveries. The Willow incident really threw a wrench into things. It wasn't just about the tech anymore. We were suddenly facing these huge existential questions.
Like we found this amazing new tool, but we're not sure if it's a hammer or a scalpel. And it might even have a mind of its own.
That's a great way to put it. Before Willow, everyone was focused on quantum supremacy, proving these machines could outperform regular computers. But Willow forced us to think about the consequences of that power, the good and the bad.
And those consequences were brought into focus by Ryan Montgomery. He wasn't caught up in the theoretical debates about quantum consciousness. He saw a real danger in those vulnerabilities he uncovered.
Montgomery was the voice of caution. While others were celebrating breakthroughs, he was saying, hold on, have we thought about the risks? And his concerns went beyond someone exploiting those vulnerabilities. What if these quantum systems get so complex, so interconnected, that they start doing things we can't predict or control?
Like opening Pandora's box, we unleash this power, but then we have to deal with all the unintended consequences.
Exactly. And that's the challenge we face now. How do we harness the power of quantum computing while mitigating the risks? How do we ensure that this technology is used for good and not for harm?
So what steps can we take? What did Montgomery and other experts recommend?
Well, for starters, international oversight is crucial. We need a global framework to regulate the development and deployment of quantum technology. Similar to what we have for nuclear weapons, imagine every country having unfettered access to potentially world-altering quantum systems with no regulations or safeguards.
That's a scary thought. So international cooperation is key. What else can we do?
Rigorous testing protocols are essential. Before any quantum system is used in the real world, it needs to undergo exhaustive testing to make sure it's secure, reliable, and behaves as intended. We can't afford to have these systems malfunctioning in critical situations.
Makes sense. So rigorous testing, international oversight. Anything else?
Absolutely. We also need comprehensive security audits conducted by independent experts. Think of a team of ethical hackers constantly probing these systems for weaknesses, identifying potential vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. And of course, we can't forget about the ethical considerations.
You're right. It's not just about preventing bad things. It's about making sure we're using this technology in a way that benefits humanity.
We need to establish clear ethical guidelines for the development and use of quantum computing. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential impact on society privacy and even our understanding what it means to be human.
It's a lot to think about, but it's clear that we can't just ignore it and hope for the best. This technology is here to stay, and we need to be prepared for the challenges it brings.
The Willow incident was a wake-up call. It showed us that progress can't come at the expense of security and ethical considerations. We need to approach this new era with a balanced perspective, acknowledging both the immense potential and the inherent risks.
It's a delicate balancing act, for sure, but it's one we have to get right. The stakes are too high.
And that brings us to the question of what happens next. Despite the risks and uncertainties, research and development in quantum computing continue at an incredible pace. Companies like Google, IBM, and Microsoft are investing billions. Governments around the world are pouring resources into this field.
So the genie is out of the bottle. We can't stop progress, but we can try to steer it in the right direction.
Exactly. We need to be proactive, not reactive. We need to anticipate the challenges and develop solutions before they become crises. And perhaps most importantly, we need to engage in a broader public conversation about the ethical implications of quantum computing. This isn't just a matter for scientists, the engineers, it's something that affects us all.
It's like we're all standing at the foot of this enormous mountain, knowing that the climb will be dangerous, but the view from the summit could be breathtaking. We need to make sure we have the right gear, the right team, and the right mindset before we start.
And that journey is just beginning.
Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of part 2. Make sure you stick around for the final part of our quantum computing deep dive as we explore the long-term ramifications of the Willow incident and whether we as a species are ready to embrace this powerful but potentially dangerous technology. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the most fascinating and thought-provoking topics out there. We'll be back after a short break. You know, it's incredible when you think about it. Something as abstract as quantum mechanics could have such real-world consequences.
It really shows how far we've come in understanding the universe, but it also reminds us that with great power comes great responsibility. The Willow incident really drove that point home. It changed the conversation from pure science to a broader discussion about the ethical and societal impacts of this technology.
Yeah, before Willow, everyone was talking about how quantum computing could revolutionize things, like medicine materials, science, AI. But now we have to consider the potential downsides, too.
The discovery of those vulnerabilities, those glyphs that Montgomery found, really changed things. It made people realize that we might be creating something we can't fully control, something that could threaten our security and privacy.
It's like we've discovered this new element, this powerful source of energy, but we don't know how to use it safely. It could become a weapon instead of a tool.
That's a good analogy, and the problem's made even harder because quantum computing is so complex and difficult to understand. Even the experts are still trying to figure out all the implications.
So how do we navigate this new territory? How do we make sure quantum computing is used for good?
It takes a multifaceted approach. First, we need to encourage responsible innovation in the scientific community. That means prioritizing ethical considerations alongside the technical advancements.
So it's not just about building the most powerful quantum computer, it's about building it responsibly with safeguards.
Exactly. We also need to educate the public about quantum computing, both the benefits and the risks. This technology will affect all of us, so it's crucial that we have an informed public discussion about its development and use.
It's like we're all part of this big experiment, and we need to be aware of the potential consequences, both good and bad.
And that brings us to maybe the most important point, international collaboration. Quantum computing is a global effort. We can only address the challenges if we work together.
So it's not about individual countries or companies competing. It's about everyone working together to make sure this technology benefits all of humanity.
Precisely. We need to establish international rules and regulations, share knowledge and resources, and work together on developing security protocols and ethical guidelines.
It's a big task, but it's essential if we want to handle the quantum era successfully. We can't afford to go it alone.
And in the end, it comes down to our values. What kind of future do we want to build with this technology? What principles will guide us?
It's a question we all need to consider, not just scientists and politicians, everyone who will be affected by this revolution.
The Willow incident was a wake-up call. It reminded us that progress can't come at the expense of security and ethics. We need to be wise, cautious, and respect the implications of our actions as we move forward.
It's a lesson we can't forget as we explore the quantum era.
The road ahead will be full of challenges and uncertainty, but also incredible opportunities to solve some of humanity's biggest problems. It's up to us to use this power wisely for the good of all.
Well, that concludes our deep dive into the world of quantum computing. We hope you found it insightful and interesting. Remember to like and subscribe to the Journeyman podcast for more deep dives into the most fascinating and important topics. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep imagining.